Guys, 2019 is ending, and you know what else should end? These 4 bad and horrible trends in the desktop PC space. But since I'd rather not finish this year on a negative note, and to set the tone for 2020, I'm going to end this video with 3 good trends that I'd like to see continue next year and beyond.
Excellent!
The Hydro X series is Corsair's new line of custom cooling parts built for the world's most powerful and stunning systems. They've gone all out with CPU and graphics card water blocks, pump reservoir combos, fittings, tubing, radiators, and coolant, providing you with everything you need to build a spectacular custom cooling loop that lowers system temperatures and improves performance, complete with vivid RGB lighting. Click the sponsor link in the video description to learn more.
The first thing that should end is Intel's 14nm flagship products. Intel, what has happened to you? Actually, I kind of know what happened. They got complacent, they got comfortable, they got overconfident because they had 0 competition in the first half of this decade. I have a scene that plays out in my head sometimes. It's at Intel headquarters, and there's some C-level executive office, and there's an engineer asking a bigwig in a suit about the R&D budget. The engineer's like, should we dedicate our resources here at Intel to rolling out new CPU microarchitecture or perfecting 10nm or 7nm lithography manufacturing? And the executive's like, no, don't bother with any of that. I want to see more of those cool drone shows. Put all the Intel money into the drone shows. Now, to be fair, Intel's drone shows are actually pretty cool, but their 14nm products are just kind of lackluster and fading fast in light of AMD's 7nm product stack that's now in full swing with Ryzen 3000 as well as Threadripper 3. Given that Intel's first 14nm product launched with Broadwell all the way back in 2014, I'd say it's well past time to move on. 14nm chips need heavy discounts to stay competitive, and Intel needs a new flagship based on 10nm at least to stay competitive with AMD. And the Intel roadmap does indicate that 10nm Ice Lake and Tiger Lake products will launch in 2020, but in what form will they finally arrive to us for socketed desktop PC use, and what will the performance be like? I hope we find out very soon. Next item on the list is bad RGB solutions. I recently built a computer with no RGB, and it was awesome. As much as I appreciate the aesthetic flexibility and customization that RGB LEDs can bring to a build, there's a lot that could be done in terms of standardization and ease of use. First off, you have the physical difficulty of the wiring job that adds a whole nother layer of effort to the build process, and then there's the software side of things, which is just kind of scattered at best. Will your motherboard's RGB software control your RAM LEDs, or will Corsair iCUE or NZXT Cam take over? Can the software even distinguish an LED strip from an AIO cooler's glowing logo? Will you be able to plug a 12-volt non-addressable and a 5-volt addressable strip in at the same time? What, you thought because your motherboard had both headers you could actually use them both at the same time? How silly of you. To be clear, I don't have much hope of a universal RGB LED standard rising to the top of the bucket of chum that we currently have available to us, but it sure would be nice. For now, just try to stick to the same brand for all your lights, because even if it's confusing and overwrought, you'll hopefully at least be able to get it functional and have everything match, which honestly was probably their plan the whole time. The next thing I'd like to see go is cases with bad airflow. There's a basic rule of thumb with PC building that I feel has kind of been lost with the current meta, and that is function over form. Can a computer look pretty? Sure it can. There's nothing wrong with making an effort to keep things visually appealing, but it should never come at the expense of function. Case in point, cases. Far too many have focused on putting tempered glass panels on the front, back, sides, top, and bottom without considering that glass doesn't allow a whole lot of air to flow through it, or bedecking the chassis with RGB LEDs, smart devices, and other add-ons of dubious real-world usefulness while neglecting the simplest functions of a case. Hold parts together and allow air to flow through for cooling. Shoutouts to Gamers Nexus here for being at the forefront of the push to get case manufacturers to make cases that just work as cases, and hopefully function over form will return as a mainstay for case design in 2020. Last item on my list here is NVIDIA's dominance of the high-end GPU market. If you're looking for a graphics card and you want to spend over $400, you have one option: NVIDIA. With barely a few edge use case exceptions, the high-end GPU space is dominated by NVIDIA, and it needs to stop. To be fair, NVIDIA is just doing what the capitalist system dictates. In the absence of competition, there is no need to reduce prices to stay competitive. This is why when the RTX 20 series cards launched, they didn't replace the 10 series cards, they simply stacked them on top at higher prices. If nothing changes, we can assume that the RTX 3080 Ti or 2080 Ti Super, or whatever it's called, will just ship with a $1,700 price tag. The RTX 4000 flagship will be $2,500, and the 5000 series cards will probably just be subscription-based based, maybe a few $100 a month if you don't want your drivers to stop working. Point being, competition keeps prices reasonable, and we have two possible ways out in 2020, Intel and AMD Radeon. Intel is still probably a ways off with their discrete GPU offerings, unless you just want to look at pictures of cool concept GPUs, which I find to be almost as good as having a functional graphics card that people can buy. Totally not baseless marketing hype, but they do have a great team and a huge amount of future potential there. AMD Radeon has mostly been talking about the mid-range cards recently, but we're still holding out for a big Navi chip that can compete in the $500 plus market. But please hurry, Intel and AMD, because I don't know how many times I can go about saying the 2080 Ti is sure a fast card, very impressive there, but it's also super expensive. Who has $1,200 to spend? Anyway though, all that stuff obviously sucks and I hope it goes away, but I wanted to end on a positive note. So here are 3 trends or other PC related things that I'd like to see continue in 2020. The first is memory and SSD pricing. Memory and SSD prices are fantastic right now. Viable 16 gig DDR4 kits can be found for $60 to $80 and starter 8 gigabyte kits for half of that. I've even seen 32 gig kits for under $100. SSDs are also cheap everywhere as well, $45 to $50 for a 500 gig drive, $80 to $100 for a 1 terabyte drive, and you can get good NVMe options usually for $10 to $20 more than that. I hope these prices stick around or continue to decline. I would also like to see more kick-ass 7nm products from AMD. AMD has been the success story of the second half of this decade at least, and it really has been exciting to see them launch good products and level the playing field on the CPU side while lighting a fire under Intel's butt. Intel has yet to move, but hopefully soon. A big ship takes longer to turn after all. We are already hearing positive things about Zen 3 and 7nm Plus though, and the fact that there will be yet another family of products that are AM4 compatible is icing on the cake. And lastly, I'd like for Intel to do some AMD-ish stuff with their next gen products. This third thing isn't really something that's happening yet, but it is something that I assume will need to happen. Intel has lost a lot of ground to AMD this year, and I hope that their response is to look at what AMD has done that consumers seem to like, such as championing a long lifespan socket for a motherboard a la AM4, creating CPUs with more cores and threads at lower prices, and allowing overclocking on lower end CPUs, as well as motherboards like B450 ones that don't cost $200 or more. I really hope Intel does this, at least to some extent, because I would honestly love to have a difficult choice in CPUs between AMD and Intel. And for that, Intel needs to follow AMD's lead and offer more choices for consumers. And that is all I've got for today, guys. I am sure you have feelings about these things too, though. What PC trends would you guys like to see die a fiery death along with 2019? And what cool stuff have you seen that you'd like to see more of in 2020? Let me know in the comment section down below. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Check out my store at paulshardware.net for merch like shirts, pint glasses, hoodies, and other cool stuff you can buy. Hit the thumbs up button on your way out if you thought this video was good, and we'll see you guys in the next one.